systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, a.k.a. ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of our Sunday DFS NFL review show here on the SHIPIT Nation YouTube station. Just 190 subscribers away from the Drive for 5. We want to get there before Christmas. Cutting it close, but we got some other shows coming up. We'll get you guys set up there. 190 away when we get to 5,000 subscribers on this YouTube channel. We'll be giving away, right in the middle of the old intro. No mute button. Nades just comes in hot. Holy. But we are going to be giving away, I'll keep it going, a $5.99 annual membership to you guys. So subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that like button. A huge, huge day for the nation. We're going to break that all down shortly. We got our guy Tyler here with us for the Line Star Show. As always, going to show you guys quickly. If you haven't yet done so, get over to Line Star. Go to linestarapp.com. You can use the promo code SHIPIT. We're going to show off the perfect lineup over there. We've got our ownership projections partnership with Line Star, and then there's lots of other things you can do on their site that they've got, and I'll let Tyler talk about that shortly. Gonna bring in our guest, Tyler. Don't know, maybe you know how to use the mute button. If you're on it, you can turn it off. Our guy Nades will give him a little pass here on this one. But what's going on, Tyler? How you doing, man?
Oh, Nades getting in early. I'm good, man. It was a fun weekend of football, and happy to go over the slate and review it with you guys.
Yeah, it's going to be another good one. The perfect lineup is a little bit off the wall, but the lineups that won tournaments yesterday are definitely going to be good to talk about. Yes. We'll go through, break all that down. Nades, I'm just messing with you, man. I know you're grinding it out between meeting after meeting, jamming this in between. We appreciate you being here with us. Always fun to break these down with you. What's going on, my man? How you doing?
Yeah, I got this beautiful light up microphone that lights up when it's not on mute. And, well, it was lit up and I forgot to hit the mute button there. Doing a double duty here, triple duty, multitasking. That's what we do over here at the Nation. We get you guys all the stuff you need. And no matter what our schedules are, we put you guys first. We appreciate everyone tuning into this show. One of the best shows of my process, your process, I'm sure Tyler's process, and many of you in the chat. So we see that. And Big Rob, too much Kamara. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Moss. We're going to talk about all of it. Can't be results oriented in spots like that. I mean, we'll talk about that. Those three running backs were chalk for a reason. They were not only the stone nut matchups of the year, but they were all in opportunities were there, everything like that. I mean, you can't be results oriented in that. And at the end of the day, some things just don't happen and don't come through. But hey, we got 2 game slate tonight with $500,000 up top. So if you didn't have the best week like myself, you got more money to make tonight.
Yeah, it hasn't been a great week for you so far. There's still time to get after it this afternoon. Hoop, Title, and myself will be over on the Mayo Media Network, 2 p.m. Eastern, breaking down those 2 games. The NFL has chose to run both of those games at the exact same time. So we're going to see. Apparently, they're testing it out to see how it goes. It's going to be interesting. If you got 2 TVs, it's nice. You can just throw it up on both. That's what I'll be doing. But I think if you don't, I like that Miami-Tennessee game. I'm going to be very interested to see how that goes. Some people are saying it's Will Levis Day. I don't know if that's going to be true. We'll break it all down later on. I kind of like Jordan Love, actually, in the other game. But we'll get there. Lots of great people in the chat. We appreciate you all. Tyler, I'm going to let you talk about this first. We're going to go through the perfect lineup over here, but just let the people know a little bit. We're getting closer to Christmas, maybe a gift idea for some, maybe for themselves. They want to treat themselves. What are some of the stuff they can find over here at linestarapp.com? Let us know, my friend.
Yeah, well, with the Line Star, I mean, what we're seeing obviously right now is the website, but we also do have an app that you can use. Super easy to use and get your information, keep up with your lineups, chat with like-minded individuals. But what we are is we're all-encompassing DFS tool site. We have your optimizer. We have a lot of tools. We also have the props AI tool, which is new. It is to help your prop betting, and it's something we're really excited about, and more people are using it and winning with it. So we're happy to have that and push more into that realm, as well as continue the DFS stuff.
Yeah, perfect. If you guys want to go over there, you can use promo code SHIPIT. I thought you were going to add something else at the end, and then I was like, maybe the mute buttons are cutting in and out. But the best would have been if Nades had tried to come back in after that situation and been on mute, and we could call him a mute donkey, but we'll see. Nades, I'll let you start this one off, man. The perfect lineup is Lamar Jackson, Breece Hall, James Cook, DJ Moore, Drake London, Debo went off again, David Njoku, Evan Ingram, the double tight end in the same game, and then the Minnesota Vikings spending $49.8, got to 262. The winner of the $20 Millie Maker, Hacksaw 11, ended up getting to around 230, I believe, 230.84. So a little bit more was here, 262.94, but this is just the optimal, the best possible lineup that you could find out there. What's your thoughts on this one, Nades? Break it down for us.
Yeah, I mean, you can call a couple plays like, I mean, obviously the Lamar play is an interesting play. We're going to see that once we review lineups that actually did win contests yesterday, right? The Lamar Jackson spend up when people are going to Mahomes, which I'm on Team Tambo, #never Mahomes. But as a spend up, people weren't going to Lamar. Obviously that game shot out. You needed that game in terms of winning any of the big contests. Lamar stacks there with Likely and dusty ass OBJ catching bombs. So interesting slate overall. But DJ Moore, obviously great play. Drake London, great play. I know I was on, I mean, those two were both in my main team that did do pretty solid. I went with the Justin Fields stack. So those two were good plays. The Debo play, you can get to Debo, right? Well, Debo just smashed last week. His talk on, hey, I need to get the ball more, things like that. I was thinking they were going to get more guys involved like a Kittle or obviously the spot that McCaffrey was. But I mean, Debo leveraging the McCaffrey spot at $3,000 cheaper almost, I mean, was a good play. Then there's Njoku, Evan Ingram. I mean, Evan Ingram apparently just scores a touchdown every week now after he finally found the box there. So I don't know. I mean, you can draw a couple plays from this lineup. The Lamar, London, Debo, and DJ Moore are pretty much what I understand or what I would have looked at. But the James Cook play, I heard some people talking about James Cook. I wasn't really on the James Cook play in that game. But, I mean, since the new offensive coordinator took over there in Buffalo, James Cook's been the guy. So the opportunity touches were there, and we're going to see him show up in a couple winning lineups too, I'm sure. So overall, I mean, kind of just when stuff like this, when chalk bust, you see a weird lineup like this, right? Because you just get random guys like a double tight end from the same game. Find the perfect build.
Yeah, it never works. That's why it's never Mahomes. It works like one time every 2 years. And then even then you got 150 lineups. You probably don't have it. So I've been saying this forever. I try and explain it to people. He's incredible. Great talent. I know people were making fun of him last night for crying and whining after the game. That was a bad look. But as far as talent goes and just Mahomes in general, he's incredible. Generational for us right now as a talent. We play DFS though. I don't care about that stuff. So to me, just a horrible waste of money when you're putting him into your portfolio. And I'll continue to say it with confidence because even when you're right and he's right and becomes optimal, you probably don't have it or you still didn't invest enough to get it right. There's not too many other quarterbacks like that make it that difficult, but just go look at any Kansas City Chiefs box score and you'll see why when the list is this long of names you got to try and pair it with. This was something too. This is what I'll say. I'll start this not just for the call. I mean, I really like that one, but I said this pre-show to these guys, and I'm excited when we get into diving into these lineups, is a lot of the plays that turned out to be good or great or in these winning lineups were, to me, great plays in the sense of not just knowing the result after the fact, but you'll see why. Like James Cook, prime example. What did we know? Pacheco and McKinnon were the topic of discussion on the other side of the game. It was expensive to stack that game up. Never Mahomes. Or if you were going like I was on the Allen side, it was awesome. You could do that. And then, by the way, I'm just messing around. People know, obviously, I played a little Mahomes on FanDuel. I said, at least there, I know I'm just going him, Rice, Kelsey, and cutting it off. But it's more of a touchdown-dependent site. So I was like, you can get a tight end. Hard to get touchdowns out of most of them. Kelsey makes sense. If Rice gets in the box, he did. And then maybe. But even then, it was very limited, and I put that in the slate plan as well. So it's a running joke, but I'm making fun of it at the same time. But the thing for James Cook was Dawson Knox was back, and he's big-time blocker, tight end. And what do you want to do? Speaking of the talent of a guy like Mahomes, you want to keep him off the field. So everyone was like, oh, but James Cook has Latavius Murray there to steal the goal line. You're not worried about the goal line. Josh Allen's there to steal the goal line too. It's one of those things. But you want him running the ball 3 to 5 times the drive, and then he's quick enough and fast enough in some cases when he doesn't fumble the ball that he can get out there and find his way in space. So a really good game for him. But from a game theory perspective, no ownership. In the game you wanted with the big total that you weren't getting to the other AJ Brown, Stephon Diggses of the world because they were too expensive. It was a way to get a piece in that game on the opposite side of where most of the field was going when they were getting a piece of that game in the running back. There's other plays like that on the slate yesterday. Mixon fit in there with Moss. He was still well under. My 2v2 swapperoo, by the way, it was Moss and Chase got more ownership than we thought. He got up there with the number, the same as Pittman, and you had Mixon much less than Moss, or at least 10 to 15, some places more, less. So that little 2v2 was like 40 points to 12 or something, just absolutely crushed again. So keep looking out for those on the Sunday show. Tyler, I'll go to you on this lineup, man. Some people thought about Lamar naked yesterday. It ended up being in the optimal, but people were saying it's hard to figure out who to put him with. He's kind of in that tone of Mahomes, but it's also just like you don't even want to put him in because there's just way better plays at those prices. When Mark Andrews is there, it makes it a little bit easier. But for this case, what do you see with this one besides Lamar up at the top, other guys mixed in, double tight end? Where are you at with this winning lot, with this optimal lineup?
Yeah, with this Lamar play, I mean, Lamar is one of the quarterbacks you can go naked just because of his rushing upside. I still will always stack him with one, and you could win doing that. And so I would always lean into the stack rather than no stack here. But as far as all of these plays, I mean, we've all talked about them. They're all pretty much decent plays, but literally every single one of them is in one of the better games of the week, minus Breece Hall.
Yeah.
You know, that game, most people were just canceling out, but we know he's a very good running back and can score in fantasy. He just hasn't been. But outside of that, every other game is either a very fast-paced game or one of the highest game totals of the week. And then you have the Vikings, who that game was just absolutely awful, and always good to target a D in one of those awful games. So I understand how all of these picks got onto the perfect lineup. It's just one of those things without the stacking. It's incredibly hard to keep picking all those on any sort of regularity.
Yeah, and I agree too. Like, I think a lot of these, like Moore and London, were awesome plays on paper, on everywhere. Like those made sense. And a lot of, like, I was on Ritter. We'll get to that in a second. I was on Fields. He was my main core with Moore and Kmet. The thing about tight end is these two just broke it. And I know that's why it ends up on the optimal, but like Bryant had been the guy with Flacco the week before. They go back to Njoku. Ingram scored his first touchdown of the season last week, like Nades had said, and now comes back and is all of a sudden the dude. Now, mind you, no Christian Kirk. So you could have got it from that angle. Trevor Lawrence does end up playing even through injury. So you're like, okay, I could see that. So you kind of see this one in hindsight, where it's funny too, because they both ended up the same. But even if you had said everyone is like interested at least somewhat in Njoku, some are talking themselves off of it, some are going in on him, you could have got to Ingram on the other side and not need both still, and got to a lineup that made sense there where he was your Christian Kirk fill-in. Debo, I said this plenty of times, just like I always say in many sports, there's no way he's getting 3 touchdowns again. That's right. You're probably correct, but he doesn't need 3 touchdowns again. 2 comes in just fine, and he still has a big game. And if you weren't getting to CMC, you'll see here, it's a much more balanced roster construction. He can still come in handy. Purdy was popping everywhere. He made sense. London, similar thing, 4,600, just too cheap for the spot, played better at home. He was in the tidbits. That's why I liked that stack. I'll go to that one in a second. Moore has been incredible out there, and it wasn't even a huge game for him. It was just a big game, but it wasn't like a 35-plus point type thing here, or like a Mike Evans week from the week before, or nothing like that. Just 26.8 was enough. Fields was solid. We talked about the opposite side of Pacheco. People were playing Garrett Wilson, who also had a great game, and Conklin was in there as well. People were playing. You could just play Breece Hall. It worked out for him. And then Lamar, obviously the spot that he was in. This continues to be a thing, by the way. Lamar Jackson versus the NFC teams just puts up 35 plus against them almost every time. So lots of good stuff you can take away from this one. Couple takeaways here quick. Going to go over to our stack rankings fast. We talked about LineStar and our partnership there. LineStar does provide our ownership projections as well. Like Tyler said, they do quite a bit over there, but just to see it, and this is where we get our total ownership from, but just look at it. We had the Browning, Hudson even got the touchdown. Chase did not come through, but the Purdy stacks came through quite nicely. You could add Debo to that as well. I had the Ritter, London, Pitt stack. Loved that one. Talked about it plenty. This was in my core. The Fields, Moore, Kmet. That was okay. Really needed Pitts or Kmet to get another touchdown to somehow keep up with the Ingrams and the Njokus of the world. Like once they get a couple, you're like, okay, I'm in trouble. But not a lot of people played Flacco, Njoku. So it was like, and then how many people had Njoku as a one-off and so on and so forth, where you could have still got there if Komet and or Pitts could have got more with these stacks that you had them with, because DJ Moore was solid, Drake London was solid. We saw both them in that optimal lineup. You could have made some of this stuff work. So the stack rankings were on point once again. And before we get to the $20 Millie Maker, I want to let people know, a lot of members watching this show, it was another huge week over at the Nation. The contest is up now. We're going to be giving away $100 cash to a member that reposts this, likes it, and comments #ShipIt. And then for every repost up to 250, we're going to add $1 to a free roll for members only tonight in the Discord. If you want to become a member, you can still get in now. Go to shipitnation.com/join. It's the last day to use code TRY20. We'll expire this after lock tonight on the 2-gamer, where it gets you in for just $49 for your first month, full access to everything. But real quick, founding family member Jill came down, turned $420 into over 108,000. Said he's now won 25K, 15K, 14K since being a member, joining us over 6 months ago now when we started, up to 108K. D-Dry, I said almost permanent hole in the 2 spot. He shipped 100K twice yesterday, 2 different slates, the afternoon slate and the showdown slate, for 200K. Shady, 0828, won 100,000 plus on the afternoon only slate. Keep it rolling. Jay Bannock won over 150,000 across 2 slates yesterday, main and the showdown. Then you keep going. Our guy K Krabs won, I think it's like his 4th and 5th final seats that he's won over on FanDuel. So 2 different. I know it's the same score, but you'll see second place is 2 different guys. He won 2 more seats yesterday to round that out to get into the finals there. I think it's his 4th and 5th. Our guy Chetty we talked about that Raven stack yesterday. He went with it, ended up shipping. Look at this, the buy-ins, like 40 or 50 bucks into over $11,000. So it's not how much you play. You can still be in the mix. Big Daddy Kane, another big week. He'd been giving away some memberships, so I think it was some good karma for founding family member Big Daddy Kane. And then we had our guy Rob, who's won over 50,000 in just the last couple weeks in NBA alone. Won 20K again. I think it was on Friday, and Red Dog won 18K. So there was that. And then one of our free college basketball channels, I had the luck there. I won 5,000, and a member, Scotty, won over 7,000 just using Smarty E stuff. So lots of good stuff going on. But I said it here, nobody out there can guarantee you winners. You have to go out and put in the work, the time. We say the tuition, if you will, of playing through it sometimes. But if you want to join a community of like-minded individuals that are out there to help each other while understanding the ups and downs of DFS, meaning they get it. There's losing days. There's plenty of losing days. And then there's a winning day. It happens. You have to be able to put the time in and go through it. ShipIt Nation would be the place for you. Go to shipitnation.com/join. Put the code TRY20 and you get full access to projections, ownership, tools, rankings, the content, the education courses, more on the way, and of course, that Discord community. So check it out. Give it a shot. Tyler, I'll kick it back to you. Let's look at this $20 Millie Maker winner. It was a tight race yesterday between this top 3. The winning lineup ended up being, to your point, you would stack them. It ended up being a stack of Lamar, Odell, likely. The Odell revenge game came true, by the way. Then it had Rashad White, Joe Mixon, Deebo Samuel, Drake London, Austin Eckler. And again, we see, of course, that Minnesota defense. It spent the full 50K and had most of what you would expect to see. No bring back from the other side of the Ravens game for the Rams. Just hard to get it right, maybe, or just didn't want to go there. But what's your thoughts, Tyler, on Hacksaw 11's winning $20 Millie Maker lineup?
One of the things that I love here is, and we talked about it earlier, where Lamar is hard to figure out the stacks with sometimes, but when you do, you have 2 pass catchers that are both super cheap. So you're saving a ton of salary, and you're able to, go to some of the chalk higher price guys throughout the rest of your lineup and, really kind of push that ceiling type score, which he did, and then also the Mixon play, it was higher owned than I thought it would be, being that Moss was going to be super chalky as well. But I, all in all, I like it. And pretty much all of his plays in that lineup were ones that I used in some of mine, except for I unfortunately just didn't have much Lamar. Yeah.
And what I was looking at here while you were talking about, because you made some great points, one being you don't know if it's going to hit, but if it does with those guys, like you get talk about a combo pack. I mean, that is extremely cheap for two guys that are putting up almost 40 points for you, and they're definitely capable of it. So I see that. But another note was no run back. And the reason I brought it up is because the second place finisher, Jay Hilgers 5, did use Kieran Williams, who had a decent game. I mean, the guy is still getting worked in a ton. He was also low owned. He was away to run it back. I know Baltimore is a tough matchup no matter what. But again, both these guys are similar. Rachaad White, volume. Kieran Williams has been getting volume. But if you look here, could have left $300 on the table, played Kieran Williams, would have cost the million and then some. Would have been I believe it looks like an $950,000 mistake just at first glance. So yeah, it would have been something that you got wrong. So you don't always have to run it back. Again, who knows how they actually got here? Something could have just went their way, or they put it by hand, or whatever it might be. But yeah, you could have left $300 and played the run back, and it wouldn't have been the winning Millie Maker lineup. So Nades, I'll go to you. Your thoughts on this one? The chat had said, White seemed to be the forgotten running back this week. I think it was more of a product of just what we had at our fingertips. There was a lot of good running back plays out there yesterday. So Nades, I'll let you talk through this one. Your thoughts on Hacksaw 11's winning lineup?
Yeah, it's hard to criticize a Millie winner, obviously, when it's built to a sense like this where it actually makes sense. What I would have probably did if I'm double stacking Lamar, right? Obviously, Lamar's got the rushing upside, but if you're double stacking, you're hoping he's throwing for touchdowns to obviously likely OBJ. I'm hoping that Rams keep it close. Obviously, they did, right? I probably, instead of Eckler here, when that news came out with Eckler, right, with the 3-headed split, and obviously Eckler still did decent, right? It was a great matchup, Denver, best matchup against running backs, all that. I would have went with probably Cooper Kupp or Nakua. Obviously, Kupp nuked, but Nakua as well, just because you're expecting them to keep the game close. So that's probably the one tweak that I would have made, but obviously he still got there. Eckler still had a decent game. That's typically how if I'm double stacking, I usually try and run it back, especially when you have the money, like when you're already having Eckler in the flex at 7,600, you have the money to grab one of those Rams pieces, whether it's Kyron, whether it's Cooper Kupp, whether it's Nakua. But that's also the other caveat to that argument is which one? They're all priced within $200 of each other, right? Which one do you pick? Is it a Nakua week? Is it a Kupp week? Is it a Kyron Williams week? If he goes to Kyron, he obviously does not win the Millie. So things like that, that's a little results oriented, but there's just ways to think about it. If you're double stacking a running quarterback like Lamar with two cheap guys, you have the salary to spend up for the stud on the other side to keep the game close. Is kind of how I would have brought that back as a little tweak there. I like the Mixon play. We were all over the Mixon. It leverages the chase. It leverages the Browning. Obviously, Mixon still got the ownership there for a good reason. Everyone was kind of in on that game. The Debo, 16% for Debo coming off a ceiling game there, but it also, you knew McCaffrey was projected to be 30 to 40% ownership, right? Well, if McCaffrey's not getting there, maybe it's Debo on an end around. Maybe it's Debo just doing what Debo did, right? And doing the modified Tyreek little peace sign as he busts through the middle of the field and runs for a 60-yard touchdown. So overall, great build here. The only tweak I would have had is probably, since you already had the money to go to Eckler, I would have probably just spent to Kupp or Kyron to give me a run back in that game.
Yeah, and the Kupp one's actually pretty interesting because he's 7,400, much lower price than we're used to seeing him at. He actually would have added 6 more points to the mix. I just had to find. I thought I would have found it a lot sooner, so I was like swiping through some of these, but no one really went with that, and it's funny. But yeah, in that case, it would make sense. $200 left on the table is more than fine. It's usually 49.7 and up is typically what you'll see win these things for the actual winning lineup of the tournament, not the optimal that we just looked at. But that would have really finished it out, right? So you would have had the run back. You would have had the secondary of White and Drake London. Again, what's a way to cut into some of the Drake London ownership? Use White on the other side. The flip side, I know Moss was, I don't know if we'll see a Moss up here. So I'll go
Moss
look that up after.
Or 5,900.
No, I mean ownership. I'll go check it in a second. I think it was 39 or 36%. But either way, Mixon did get some steam late, but I don't hate it. Opposite side, we talked about that. Debo instead of CMC, a different defense than the chalk 3K Cleveland D. All would make sense, and we'd be in pretty good shape here still. So I definitely don't mind that. What was the final number on? So the
Moss
Jets
came in at 38.77% in the $20 million.
Yeah, 38.8 here for Moss. So that was that one. And then I was looking up the other defenses, and it was 12 for the Jets. I was trying to see if I could find a Cleveland here quickly just to see. But we can always go back and look, like just that's another thing to see the defense.
So Cleveland came in at 19% and scored 12 points.
Yeah. And this is the stuff too, where again, like people always auto avoid. I think underweight is typically a good stance, but like the other thing people forget is where it's twofold of being extremely high variance. That's why people say, oh, you can just fade the chalk D and you'll get there. It got there this week, but I'm saying like also there is some certainty to a spot like this. And that's why you'll see, even when people are using sims and stuff now, especially and looking at that, you'll still see this usually come out in pretty good form just because there is some certainty to the spot and the projection is so strong based on that you still see it be popular for that reason. I think a lot of sharper players, we'll look at some of the exposures later, they won't exit out, but they'll take an underweight stance to it. And that is what I like. I think that makes more sense. Like, let me get some Cleveland, but let me also get all the options around it that could do pretty well. We talked about New Orleans, Minnesota, we just saw in the winter, all of that. But it was both, Josh. This was talked about pretty much all week. Again, I do a lot of content and I watch a lot and listen to a lot, and it was either or, right? No, you didn't really care. You're either getting a gimped up, as they were saying, Trevor Lawrence, who's coming in that's going to be on one knee or one leg or whatever it might be, or you're getting one ankle, I should say, with the high ankle sprain, or you're getting the backup in Beathard. So I think that was why, and it was fine. I actually thought, I said this all week, like people can say what they want. My point was that it's twofold. And that's why. That's exactly why. I don't know how you don't know. It's literally obvious. It's a guy playing on a high ankle sprain or the other. They still scored 12. Like that is perfectly fine. And this ownership percentage, I argued this all week too. Like other spots like this, we've seen 30 to 40%. You just weren't getting it. Like people couldn't fully commit. It was going up, down, up, down. So you actually had it stay in check. And I saw them on other teams out there that were in good shape. That won. The challenge is you got a 3,100 and a 2,400 that beat them. So while not needed, the point was they didn't do horrible and they were still in a really good spot, either or. So regardless of that, I think they're fine. Let's go look at the 555 Millimaker. Legendary, Hishbu has just been on fire. This guy's incredible. Great dude, family man. He just did an interview on the High Stakes podcast with Neil Orfield, which you should go and watch. He's just an awesome guy. I've got the pleasure of meeting him a few times out there. He always brings his family out. Awesome dude. Just crushed it, man. First and second. I know he won a bunch, and fifth, I should say. Who knows? And ninth. Like I didn't even see all those. I knew first and second. But on top of that, he won a bunch more world championship seats yesterday. So he'll be going to Arizona this week. So just awesome for him. He's the right now the current fantasy baseball world championship winner. Just a crusher of all sports. So shout out to Hishbu, Ritesh. Congrats. Let's talk about his lineup, Tyler. Here's the winning lineup. Leverage some of that CMC ownership, leverage some of that Moss ownership, and then got some other good plays in there as well. Even went on the opposite side of Njoku in this one, went against the CEHs. Like this lineup was just, man, $100 above Cleveland. This is what we're talking about, and that's why we're talking about a legend in Hishbu. Brock Purdy, Ayuk, Debo. Don't need to run it back. Opposite side Moss and Mixon. Plug in Javonte Williams and Drake London. They're fine. Go opposite side of Njoku, who actually ended up crushing, but it's just to say the other side of it. Instead of that, no Christian Kirk. Not use a running back in the flex where most have CEH or are deciding on McKinnon, and go with Rice, who's still popular, but again, not who you play. It's how you play them. Not with one of those running backs, not in the wide receiver hole, and then goes with Minnesota defense at a much lower ownership than Cleveland there. We'll look at his other second place lineup in a second, but Tyler, I'll let you talk about this one first.
Yeah, I mean, going with Purdy, Ayuk, and Debo in this contest, there's not many people that would have had that stack to begin with. And then that just kind of allows them to go to some of the chalkier pieces with London, with Rice, with Mixon. And all in all, it's just an extremely well-built lineup. And you can really only say good things about that lineup.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally perfect. The setup of it, and doesn't matter, but like just to go back and look, like I looked at this earlier, and of course it always does this on me. It breaks, so we'll go back to it. But just to see, like I knew he played the max.
I got his exposures. Yeah, he's got 75, and I brought up his exposures because that was a point I was going to bring up, because if if you look at his exposures, he obviously was going in on the Brock Purdy stack because he was basically underweight the field on McCaffrey. So he knew if he was going to underweight the field on McCaffrey, he had 26.7% of McCaffrey. So he probably thought he was going to go in line with the field or a little bit under, right? In this contest, McCaffrey came in at 36.3%. He had 26. So he was trying to basically match the field or be slightly under. But when you look at his Purdy, he had almost 40% Brock Purdy lineups when the field was between 13 and 15%. So he knew he was going like 2.5x the field, right? On Brock Purdy. The other thing that he did was he had 17% Jake Browning, basically matching the field. But what he did at the running back position is he had almost 80% Joe Mixon. So that's the stuff we're talking about when you're building a MME set. Tambo, you talk about all the time. That's why you build in multiple sets, especially in Showdown, to cover different game scenarios. He built and structured his pool, building in leverage to each position, but still covering the other angle, right? So he still had the Browning stacks, but when he didn't have the Browning stacks, he was leveraging with Mixon, right? If Browning's not getting there at that price and Chase isn't getting there, well, maybe it's Mixon. And so that's one thing that stands out to me is his exposures. He was underweight on McCaffrey, overweight on Purdy, underweight on Browning, overweight on Mixon, right? Just like so much leverage built in.
I'll pull them up in a second. Yeah, I'll pull them up in a second. I want to continue on this path anyway for a second because I misspoke. I forgot this was the 555 milli maker, so you actually could put 150, and he played 75, which is half. I see here Two Gun, another great player, 64. Osimo only played 50 instead of maxing it out. So just the note of not needing to max it out, but also talking about those world championships, I know for a fact, and Hishbu, one of the best out there at everything, but also at satellites and qualifiers, been playing for many years where he's winning these seats and getting in. I met him at King of the Beach a couple times as well too. So seeing him in all these places, it's via satellites. You can get a lot of these tickets within those. I know a lot of people think like 75 at 555, he's in for heaps. He wins a lot of them in these satellites. A lot of these guys do, to be honest. So you got to remember that as well, but just a great return on it. And to Nade's point, you can just click in here and see if we go by quarterback, he was way over on Brock Purdy, 37%. The rest he was pretty even or under on, but just over on Browning, just under on Fields, over on Lamar, fine. You go here, like Nate said, way over on Mixon. So he was going to be in on him no matter what, meaning you could still stack him in to your lineups with Browning, which you definitely could do for the price range of both. It was very cheap to combo them up. So it still went in on CEH that didn't get there. So you see in that other lineup, no CEH, but instead Rice. Underweight on McCaffrey, underweight on Zach Moss. And there you go, the flip of the Moss to Joe Mixon. We're not going to go through everything in all of it, but heavy on Zay Jones. Ayuk, of course, with those stacks. Debo, much more Ayuk than Debo, too, which is interesting as he ended up in that one. So that's just the way that shakes out. Ability to put a lot of good plays. DJ Moore, Jamar Chase, Olave, London, Pittman, all those guys in when you do it like that. Tight end, heavy on, I think this is still him. Just one second. Yeah, Likely. And then Pitts, Cole Kmet with those quarterbacks we talked about. And then defense, I'm curious his Cleveland situation here. Let me just see something real quick. I want to make sure I'm on it. Defense. Yeah, fixed it. Yeah, so Cleveland way under. So again, didn't get rid of them. This is what I talked about earlier, but went under on Cleveland, which allows you to get over on a couple in that range, or a few, Minnesota, the Jets, and Cincy, while getting San Francisco in there, which I liked as well. You got the news late of Geno maybe not being in there. I definitely still thought that was a good way to go about it. And just to go back, because now that I fixed it, I knew it didn't look right. He wasn't as high on Likely as what that was, but he was heavier on Kittle. So it was Ayuk Kittle stacks more with the Purdy stuff than Debo. And it's funny because Debo actually ended up in that lineup, but at 8% in that field. Let's look at his second one, Tyler. Very similar, but this is the one I was bringing up pre-show and the one that I saw win a lot of the qualifiers that he was in. So while it still ended up second in this tournament, and he had a better version of it, that was in his big set of 75 or whenever he moved it around. Something about this one stuck out for him. And maybe it's some of the safety factors that we'll talk about in a second, but just in general, something about this one stuck out because he used this one in more of those cues. And I will say the first part that stands out to me is in the cues that we're talking about. We're talking about higher dollar, smaller field. you can definitely get away with running an overstack like this, or more of what we'd call an onslaught, because you can get away with more mistakes. But if you're right, you're really right, and you just blow away the field. And I believe in most of the ones I was in and saw him, it was 205, and the next closest person being around 185, and in situations like that. So it did do its job, Tyler. Go ahead, talk about this one. Obviously, a little bit aggressive on the pass catchers, right?
Yeah, I mean, in those contests, the smaller amount of entries, it makes total sense, especially with the 49ers had the highest team total yesterday by like four points or something like that. So it made a lot of sense just stacking them heavy. I mean, it was likely going to be a blowout, but the blowout doesn't have to be all McCaffrey. It can be the pass catchers, and they all got it done. And Kittle could have been very close to breaking the slate as well. He had a couple, big plays, just didn't get the target volume as Debo kind of took everything. But it's another good lineup. I mean, kind of what you expect from Hishbu at this point. So congrats to him. What a day, man.
Yeah, massive day, and then gets to go now. Bunch of seats in Arizona this upcoming weekend with 2.5 million up top. We got our guy G Rising there. I'm gonna be rooting for him as well as all these other guys that I know and like around the industry. But Nades, I'll kick it over to you. Obviously, you play Purdy like this, you get what you need. It's funny though, like Purdy 25 because he has to just chuck it basically, and that's what you'll get out of him a ton. But then look at Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, the double tight end, all this stuff, Mixon instead. But the interesting part to me, Nades, was why I said maybe it's the safety factor of it, was like obviously the onslaught that you're putting in, and then the CEH play is like, at least I'll get a little more of CEH and Garrett Wilson and some of those safer plays in there. But what's your takeaway on this lineup with the extra guys?
The first thing I see that stands out to me is 5,900. Who else was 5,900 in the flex that everyone was playing? Is Zach Moss, right? So, I mean, that's one thing that stands out to me. He went with the double tight end, double leverage, right? George Kittle, he's already onslaughting. So if he's doing Purdy, I mean, he could have easily played Zach Moss at 60% ownership or whatever you probably came in. I mean, he was probably almost 40% in this contest. So throw in Kittle there, leverage the Cleveland defense chalk against Evan Ingram in the tight end spot. Do the double tight end. You don't need a run back because you don't know if is it JSM, is it Lockett, is it Metcalf with all the stuff going on there, right, in Seattle. And you're hoping if you're building like this that San Fran's just going to blow the doors off this team, so you don't really need a run back. And then you just come back with good plays on the other end. He didn't jump away from the $4,200 Clyde Edwards-Helaire coach speak there, right, splitting carries and all that. The Joe Mixon, right, to leverage the chase, the Brownings. We already talked about that. And then the Garrett Wilson play probably just fit his script. Obviously, he had a decent amount of Garrett Wilson. When you look at his exposures, Garrett Wilson was his third highest receiver. So he definitely saw something in Garrett Wilson, whatever it was. Obviously, a very sharp play there to get to Garrett Wilson in that game that nobody wanted to go to, right, because it was gross weather game there. And obviously that's what you need. One play like that to differentiate your portfolio and get you to the top. So overall, obviously amazing build, amazing player, and even a better guy, which is cool to see.
Yeah. And that's one thing too, like the Wilson to Wilson connection. I'm going to go look that up in the $20. I feel like this is interesting that it was maybe less popular here. I might be wrong. I'll go check that out again, but he was still popping for sure. And people were talking about Zach Wilson being back and how many targets he gets. And it's still a decent spot for them, even though it's not the best teams that you want to be targeting, can still rack them up quick. We talk about that all the time. We're still got a wide receiver
Garrett Wilson,
extremely talented. We see this
6%.
Okay, so similar. It's crazy they didn't get as much, but I guess you're filling it with other spots. But we've seen this in the past too with guys like Christian Watson. Before the injury, you can get like a very talented wide receiver on a team that everybody thinks is bad so that they don't want to go there, but you still can rack these up. We saw it yesterday with Drake London for 4,600. Same thing. He's still their wide receiver one. If you thought it was going to be the situation stuff, I'd posted in the tidbits that Atlanta plays better at home, not only just London, but it's all of them. Ritter, London, and Pitts all have much better numbers at home. They did again yesterday as well. But another one here too, like nobody was getting fooled by that late news. I talked about this on the show yesterday. People will remember as well that McKinnon's going to get splits and all this stuff. Like nobody gets fooled by that because you can see here, he could have moved Kittle up in the tight end. He could have had Jerick McKinnon here and had JSN down here and had a little secondary stack that way and still go about it and be opposite side of Moss, not going there, still use a $5,900 spot, but put it at tight end instead of Moss in one of these flex or running back spots. And then, be different that way. But I wanted to see if he even went to Seattle guys much.
He had no McKinnon in his pool. None, zero.
I doubt many did. Like I said, I don't think anyone was getting fooled by that. Like that's just that type of stuff that late is just, I never really go off it. McKinnon got in too. I don't know what he ended up scoring. I can look that up too. But the last thing I liked you brought up this point, Nades, was not on Cleveland defense, on Evan Ingram. Not many people, again, if you're going off of the Cleveland D, why not do it with the guy that could be filling in with Christian Kirk out and getting more targets that way with Trevor Lawrence playing? So definitely like that spot. And now again, we'll break.
And he had no Seattle. He had no Seattle piece in his player pool at all. None.
Yeah, let's go see. Nades is all the spoiler. He's the non-mute spoiler alert play of the day. Let's see it here. Hishbu. Go to
JSN's the only guy.
That's what I want to see. Yeah, JSN 9%, and that makes sense because he's got stacks there. But just out of curiosity, I wanted to see that, and then also the running back situation. Like you said, nobody was playing him. I'm curious actually. If you go, what's the best way to do this now? Running back by price. I think you can look at it. Jerick McKinnon got to 8%, 7% ownership. So he did get some ownership in there. He ended up getting 12 points. But yeah, didn't fool many in this field. So that's one thing just to note and see. Was there anything else that you guys wanted to look at here? Anything in the chat you guys wanted us to have a look at? I'm just trying to see.
I do want to bring up one more thing about the McKinnon. So it's interesting that he got to 7% in this field, but in the $20 Millie Maker, he got to almost 11%. So that just shows you more people reacted in the $20, but the sharper, higher stakes players still stuck with the Clyde Edwards.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up too. That's what I was saying yesterday, and that is 5% higher. So it's 7 to 12 is quite the difference on that. But it's like you said, many people. What's the delta then? Now that you've got it up there, what's the delta on CEH instead? What did CEH get to him?
Clyde came in at 21%. In the $20. So more people jumped off of Clyde onto McKinnon, whereas in this contest of 555, not many people jumped on McKinnon and people just stayed on Clyde. Yeah,
so there you go. I expected that. Obviously, 1-to-1, you expect that, but I'm saying you still you got to see it to make sure, because just curious if sometimes people are playing more of a guy or not because of the field size and more people that would just have interest in it, Chiefs fans, things like that, versus did people actually panic and move? And that's the thing. So, yeah, we chatted about this in Discord. Nick said too. Yeah, I talked about it plenty on the show. I was like, I did not see that. There was game stacks and stuff that I thought he could make sense in. If you were running like the Allen side of the stack, you expect Buffalo to get up and then maybe Kansas City reverts from the original game plan. But I thought it would be the same. And then they usually like to hang on to McKinnon to keep him healthy down the stretch. I don't think – one thing I wanted to look at was Giant Squid. This is one of those things that only so many will get, but anybody watching this show should get. I'll say rough day. He had an incredible day. Awesome dude as well. And great day for him and everybody over there. But he came second in the $250 Millie Maker with $1 million up top, the Fan Online Championship on FanDuel, and then came fourth here. And I'm sure he had a great, again, overall, I know he made great money and had a wonderful day, but only those that play heavily enough to understand the difference of, winning 100 or 200K, but being millions short of what you could be versus the other. But congrats to Giant Squid. This was his lineup here. He had similar to what we looked at earlier, but I showed this off a couple weeks ago with one of my lineups. I liked lineups like this. I really like the setup here of Lamar, Zay, Odell, likely, maybe one more than we thought, but again, you can get away with it. We just saw it, but I like the secondary setup of Rachaad White with Drake London and Bijan. He's really just targeting 2 game scripts here. A good play in Kamara, who that's what we'll talk about in a second, Kamara, and then Minnesota. But Tyler, I'll kick this one to you. It's another onslaught, but it's also like, I don't know if anyone has a name for this out there yet, but it's like the boosted secondary stack, where instead of just going Rachaad White with one guy, you pick up multiple pieces with no quarterback in the other game just to say, look, it's in a dome. This is a tougher slate. There's weather out there. I feel good about these guys. Let me get enough pieces. I know people did it with Indy Cincy this week too. I saw a lot of people with like Zach Moss, Pittman, and Mixon, or something like that, or along those lines. We saw it a couple weeks ago with Mixon, Chase, and one guy from the other side. So give me your thoughts on this one here, Tyler. Giant Squid, another amazing player, another huge day. Just didn't get to the top of either, but very close to both, which is always close.
Yeah, I mean, he was right there. The one thing I would say is Lamar isn't a guy that generally passes for, 350 plus yards. And that's kind of what you need if you're going to go with that kind of mega 4-man stack. And, unfortunately, this one didn't get him there, but he was very close. And I really do like the other side of the game, or other side of the stack with Tampa and Atlanta. I was, a lot higher on Bijan once Vita Vea was out for Tampa. Just lets their Rushdie, down so much, not having him there. And for 6,500 and the workload that he's been getting, I really thought that play was pretty good and probably going a little under-owned, just like Rachaad White was.
Yeah, that definitely made sense from the Bijan side of things. And the other thing about Bijan we talked about on the show yesterday is there was just no, you had the situation set up of Moss, CMC, CEH, maybe Mixon late steam, which did end up coming true. And then how does a guy like Bijan crack 15% at that point, or some of the other guys in that range? You just kind of knew there was going to be natural volume guys. Oh, and Kamara. Don't forget about Kamara. We talked about too, who we'll go more on that in a second, but definitely interesting from that perspective. It's tougher to get there with this. The nice part is, for our guy Giant Squid, is one over on FanDuel. It was another Saber Sim member that won. Elusive Smoke, a great player in his own right, that got the job done, that beat him and edged him out. And here it was no chance. Even if he makes the swap from Zay Flowers and says enough is enough with these two and gets what did Garrett Wilson score? I think he was 5,600 and got 24 or something. Okay, sure, it pops him up another 100K, but not even close to the top. Luckily, Hishbu blew out the field, so you don't feel as bad about this one. So there is that. And then on the other side, another member over there won for them. So again, congrats to those guys. But just in general, Nades, you said you want to talk a little bit about Kamara. I said off the top of the show, I feel like I swear, I think this is true. I'm not making this up. I think Kamara had 13 points in the first half and then ended with 13 and a half. So maybe I'm wrong on that. Someone can correct me out there, but it was pretty tough to watch after the fact. I thought it was going to be a much bigger day. And that's why, if you remember, Nades, last week when Tyreek Hill goes off on the first run of the game, the first setup of the game, and everyone's like, oh, we got there already. And I was like, shh, we did not get there. We did not get there. That's what he needs to do. 8,200, not quite the same price tag as $9,200 Tyreek last week, but still, or 96, but it's still up there. So what was your thoughts on Kamara on this slate, the way things worked out?
Yeah, Kamara, he was chalk for a reason. He's 33% owned in the contest with the best players in the world, right? 555 entry, best players in the world. It was Carolina's terrible against running backs, right? There's the no Taysom Hill, there's the Derek Carr captain check down, right? So it was just a game script that just didn't, for whatever reason, go Kamara's way. Like you said, he had 13 points in the first quarter, and then just doesn't do anything after that. He still got 5 targets and 12 carries, but I'm going to play that play again, just like I played Zach Moss again this week, right? You can't be results oriented in spots like this. You see some of the best players in the world, looking at Giant Squid's ownership here from the running back position. Kamara he played all the chalk. He had 35% Mixon, 35% Kamara, 38% Zach Moss. And he picked one play, Rachaad White, to get over the field on. So, that's where you talk about all the time, Tambo. It's not about who you play. It's about how you play them. There's not an X button or a lock button, right? You talk about that all the time in your optimizer. You can match the field or go slightly underweight or slightly overweight the field on chalk guys. They're chalk for a reason, especially at the running back position. It's not like wide receiver chalk where there's 3 other wide receivers that are on the line in 4 wide receiver sets, things like that are competing. Zach Moss was getting all the work. Kamara getting all the work with no Taysom Hill. Mixon's always been the guy there in a good game environment, right? Rachaad White, game script independent, right? Passing game, when they're playing from ahead, he's the guy. So he went in on that. So that's the takeaway from that piece that I want to bring up is don't be results oriented. Oh, Kamara, 8,200. He didn't get there. He failed, blah, blah, blah. Like he had plenty of opportunities to get there. And so did Zach Moss. Zach Moss had what? 10 touches inside the 5 again or something like that. And just didn't score a touchdown. So that's the one point I want to bring up.
Yeah, it can go both ways. And then other guys in bad matchups can get there. It's just that's why I ignore that stuff quite a bit and talk about that often, just because in general, the thing is like, you just don't know how a game's going to go. We talked about weather opportunities and situational stuff that you'll see. Tis the season. I thought Title made an incredible point on that yesterday where, you can pick a side and you could say it goes both ways. The D can still get some luck because some slips and some tips and things like that. It can definitely work both ways. It kind of is a 50-50 spot. But remember that he said the guy on offense knows where he's going for his route. The guy on offense that's running the ball knows where the guys in front of him are moving to on his O-line to go behind them or get in the way where somebody else doesn't necessarily know it, that they could slip, fall, make a mistake, do all that. So I really thought that was just something that you can see this stuff go both ways, all the time. So let's see what Jordan said here. New one says, not a knock, just very curious on the Moss thing again with him getting bumped all the way up to 5 and his workload being there but not producing. Why was he chalk? Everything you just said. 5.9K is not very expensive for a starting running back. It's all how you look at it. But again, he got all the touches again. I think it's now it's like 9 or it's somewhere. I could be way off. It might be 12 actually carries inside the 5 over the last 2 weeks. It might be 9. Also, I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but it's definitely almost 10 or more that he's been getting opportunities. My just big takeaway on that was what I tried to say earlier. Like it's not, the field is 49% on him. It's not flop lag that you were hoping for. Like you were just playing a good spot again. Taylor was out. The matchup was fair. It's a great spot to get after it. He got the workload again. He played all the snaps. He got the opportunities. He didn't get there. He could have done a bunch where he had a 20-yard TD called back as well on a hold. Like lots more could go your way. If you don't like him, there was other ways that you could go about it. And a lot of people did it with the Mixon, hence the late steam on Mixon. But just going back to Giant Squid's stuff here, like if you go look, quarterback, way over on Jake Browning, played the never Mahomes. That's fine. Heavy on Wilson, Baker, didn't get to Ritter here. So I didn't see that. Obviously we showed earlier our stack rankings liked both those guys in that game. And that's kind of why I went after it. The Dome game, you saw some opportunity there, but this was interesting. Only 7% Lamar, but really liked the Beckham play. 27.5%, Tyler. He was still in on Beckham. You think that was just like $3,800 is still a fair price for this guy. Maybe he, knows ball and thought something or the other, but even Saber Sims, I'm pretty sure he's going off what the Sims are saying. I wonder what your thoughts are on why Odell got such a big boost. Cause obviously with only 7% Lamar, he played a ton of Odell outside of those lineups.
Yeah. I mean, my guess there is just total volume play, 3,800, super cheap. And he's going to be in the game a ton for the Ravens. And if that game goes, he's going to get some targets. Just matters if he gets a deep one like he did. So that would be my guess, is just low owned and value play that's going to be on the field a lot.
Yeah, the one other thing that stood out to me, I'll get Nades your thoughts in a second, but played almost 30% of a more expensive defense. Played almost 20% Kelsey at 7,800. Played a bunch of $8,600 Keenan Allen. So remember too, it's like, again, people always wonder, like, how does this work out? Like it has to still add up. It's a salary-based game that we play. It's definitely the possibility that just based on some of that stuff too, it would push more in as him of the better guys within that spot. Nades, if you want to talk through it for a second, I'm going to try and see what I can find here just for one more thing, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, that's the point that I was going to bring up. I mean, I feel like you're in my head, Tambo, but I just filtered by his salary and his exposures. He was overweight the field on everyone except McCaffrey above 7,300. So Kyron Williams, he was overweight. Herbert, Jamar Chase, Mike Evans, Lamar Jackson, Travis Kelce, he was almost double the field on that. Mahomes, he was almost double the field or triple the field on that. Kamara, he was in line. Keenan Allen, he was way overweight. So when you have all those guys up at the top end that you want to go overweight on, you have to have cheap guys. And not only that, the other point I want to bring up is, let me see his Zay Jones. So he still had So he still did have Zay Jones. That was the other point I was going to bring up, because Zay Jones was the guy that people were going to in that price range at 3,700. It just so happened he went in on both Zay Jones and Odell Beckham because they fit his roster construction. So that was the other point that I wanted to bring up, because Zay Jones, 3,700, he was getting steam, right, with the no Christian Kirk thing there. You see some of the best players in the world went in on Zay Jones, right? Like Hishbu, who had 50% Zay Jones. Giant Squid kind of still went over the field, but he split the ownership basically between those two, OBJ and Zay Jones, because they fit the roster construction.
Yeah, how much? That was the other thing too, because Hishbu was really high on Zay Jones, right? When we looked at it,
he had 46.7%, and then his other receivers, he used a little. He went way underweight on Mingo, which was another talking point to talk about. Mingo at 3,500 came in at almost 18% in this 555. So leveraging up a little bit, $200 to Zay Jones and $300 to OBJ is another leverage play that they could have been looking at too. They might have had a better read, obviously, on the Mingo ownership there, because Mingo came in at almost 18% in this 555, whereas in the $20 Millie Maker, Mingo came in at 11%. So again, difference between contest selection. The sharper players were obviously on that Carolina game and went with Mingo as the run back, as a cheap piece, who's been involved. So that's another piece too to touch on there.
Yeah, and real quick, because I really like that call you just brought up. That was the breakdown. Like if you go from Zay Jones to that could make some sense as well, just as a way to get natural leverage. But Beat Boss says this. So I tried to find, I'm going to go to the flea flicker. I had 120 in that yesterday, but it doesn't let you show. Like if you see here, I played all my money. I can promise that in the FFWCQs, it did not go well. I did not qualify, but it won't let you pull any of those up. So that's what I'd spent my money on yesterday. I had four total in the 1250s and then played the 470s as well. So it was a rough day for your boy over there. Gave some back after the huge week last weekend, but this was one of my favorite lineups. I just found this one quick. My core was set up with a Fields lineup, but I talked about this one plenty on the show yesterday, and this had the 2v2, and this really had everything. For whatever reason, also their stuff is busted, but you can see here 40,800. The last play in this lineup is CMC at $9,200 exact. So just to note it, but this one I really loved. Ritter, London, Pitts, no run back, used the Mixon Pittman as opposed to the Moss Chase that I talked about. Had Kamara with Mingo, and then it had the Chicago defense not playing anyone there. No Buffalo, Kansas City, and with CMC to round it out. So this is like, you guys know how I like to build my lineups. This one was probably one of my favorites, and it didn't even do great. What would it have done? Like 168 or something? I think. What did CMC get? 20 points?
Yeah, he got
19 and change, I think.
Yeah, so it's only like
19.3 points.
Maybe it's 169.9, whatever. Nice. You know, you got that nice little 169 in there. But the setup here, Nades, is pretty usual for me, but it had a lot of what I talked about yesterday. It had a lot of what I was going through. Mingo was in the tidbits. Pitts, London, Desmond Ritter were in the tidbits. I talked about the 2v2 switch. Obviously, Kamara became a much better play and made sense across from Mingo. When you're not playing any of the Detroit guys and you're not on the other stuff, you can go to Chicago defense there. Nades, you have any thoughts on this one before we get out?
Yeah, I have thoughts you use the stack rankings to help you build this, because you can build this same lineup directly from the stack rankings, right? The McCaffrey play. Okay, Brock Purdy's the second highest stack on our site, which obviously if you played that stack, you were pretty happy there. Whether you did it with Kittle or Debo, you were pretty happy. But since you weren't doing that, you threw in the McCaffrey. Desmond Ritter, London, Pitts, right there, the third stack. You scroll down, who's the first wide receiver for the Panthers that pops up? Jonathan Mingo in there. You're not on the Bengals, right? With the Mixon play, the Colts, right? First wide receiver right there, Pittman. I mean, you can build that whole lineup right off the stack rankings. Then that just goes to show you we stand behind our tools that are on the site ourselves, building it. I mean, it's just goes to show you.
Anybody who saw it in the slate plan yesterday, Browning, Ritter, Fields, Brock. I mean, a lot of these guys were up there. Lamar was the one guy I went off the board on, but I think it shows others did as well. That, again, sometimes you have to make some. So like that's the final point. Good one. I'll let Tyler give your final thoughts. But, you said it too, like Goff way down the board. I thought Chicago D made a lot of sense at $2,400. If you're not going to any of this stuff anyway, and I was going to it in my Fields lineups, I said you don't have to run them all back, but if I did, I liked Amon-Ra or Monty in the game there, and that was the setup. But I was using all these guys up here. Two of the plays, though, again, you have to kind of think through it more. Lamar was definitely one of them. I was using the angle of the NFC matchup stuff at home. I thought it was a really good spot. I was actually surprised the Rams put up as good of a fight as they did. I thought we could see a blowout, but I remember somebody has to cause the blowouts. We saw it again last night. Dak continues to prove that when it happens. Purdy, yesterday, they crushed, but Purdy had to go off first for them to get up for it to be a blowout. And then the second one was the James Cook piece that I brought up earlier, where obviously, again, it's not going to pop in your projections. It's not going to pop anywhere, but you could angle it from this perspective as well. If it didn't like Josh Allen, I used him and Lamar as my two payoff options. But if you didn't like Josh Allen, maybe you go with a guy like Zach Moss. The setup of James Cook, not Zach Moss, because of that and because of the other reasonings I said with Dalton Knox back and the opposite side of the Kansas City guys and so on and so forth. So I think there's a lot of things we could talk about there. Tyler, I want to say this first before you give your final thoughts. Just thank you so much to LineStar. They're still going to be sponsoring this show, doing our ownership, but this is Tyler's last show. This is our second last review show. So Nades and I'll be back next week, and then it's Christmas and New Year's and the regular season wrapping up. So this will be the second last review show of the season. I should have reminded you off the top. I just want to say thank you so much to Tyler, to LineStar. It's been a lot of fun doing the show with you, my friend. Give us your final thoughts and anything else you want to add there.
Yeah, it has been fun season, fun show. So thank you for having me on. One of the things I would say, going back to your lineup, it's one of the points that we've hit a couple times throughout the season is when you have that stack that is different, it doesn't matter where else you play. You can fill in that chalk. Kamara, Mixon, Pittman, 14% isn't super chalk. Mingo was a chalkier, value piece. All of that doesn't matter. And, CMC, as you said, is also in this lineup. Doesn't really matter because you're already different enough with Ritter, Pitts, London all together. So I like how you built it. London had a great game. Had he thrown one more touchdown to London, your stack would have went absolutely nuts. And he absolutely had the chances to do that.
Yeah, it would have been a lot better if he threw that's why I said I wasn't super worried even when Njoku got his second, because I was like, I know a lot of people didn't play Flacco. So I was like, Pitts already had got me one. It was like a 36-yard touchdown or whatever. I was like, if he could get one more to Pitts, I'm going to double up in this spot, and then maybe I can get a little bit more. Pittman missed the bonus by like 5 yards. This is results oriented. I'm just saying what you said is so true. And that's the difference. People are like, oh, so you played all the chalk. No, like even when you plug them in, yes, it's a little bit chalkier. But the point is like when you have a 9%, an 8%, and a 3%, plus some correlation stuff that's unique to the field, I think that you could still get it. Like, again, how many people had Kamara and Mingo? Probably more when you look at how many people had someone with Kamara. It was likely to be Mingo. But how many people had this with no Zach Moss, no CEH, and nobody from that Buffalo-Kansas City game entirely, and so on and so forth, with a Ritter Pitts? Like, just nobody, really. So that's kind of where you've got yourself out of being pinned into a corner into a lineup that still has a way to find its way to the top. Again, Tyler, thank you so much, man. We do appreciate you. Love our partnership we've got with you guys over there. Just like I said, if you want to go over to linestarapp.com, got a whole lot more going on than just the NFL season at stake here and at hand. You can use promo code SHIPIT to check it out. Nades, final thoughts from you, man, before we get out of here. This is our second last review show of the season.
No, as always, we appreciate the partnership, Tyler. I love LineStar. I use LineStar a ton. And going back to another LineStar plug here, I mean, they have the red zone snap, and going back to Zach Moss, right? Last 2 weeks, Zach Moss rush attempts 9 inside the 20, inside the red zone. You can see all that for every position, wide receiver, tight end. You can see targets. You can see all that very easily. And the app when you're on the go, obviously, especially now with the holidays, we're all going to be traveling, dealing with family, whether you like it or not, screaming kids, stuff like that. Obviously, there's still DFS. There's football and NBA this year on Christmas going on. And they got an app that's very easily mobile friendly. I use it a ton for the NHL product. I talk about that a ton in our Discord chat. Pump it up, LineStar. So I've been a LineStar subscriber for many years. Love the product that you put out. So it's been awesome jumping on with you, Tyler. Appreciate you jumping on. And for everyone else in the chat, we'll be back next week. But go back and watch these shows and just learn different pieces that we bring up, because this is how you become a better player. It's all about building a process and sticking to a process and remolding that process to continue to adapt with the field, which obviously all the best players in the world, there's a reason Hishbu continues to be a profitable player, because he constantly, I'm sure, reviews lineups, goes through this. Obviously, Tambo's had great success this year. This is a massive part of his process, and I learned a ton from Tambo, and that's why I love doing the show with him. So we appreciate everyone for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know what works for you, but like I say, for me, I've got a process. I talk about it plenty over at SHIPIT Nation. We do all these shows for free, breaking it down even further. So if you're not a member, it's great. You can still just watch these shows. Like Nate said, you can go back with these review shows, and they're evergreen in the sense it's just applying process to what we see and sort of getting ideas and getting thought process that you can use to make your own. We talk about it all the time. Don't join SHIPIT Nation if you're looking to be, give me hoops picks. Like if you want to use those as a guideline, I understand it. Or Tambo's slate plan. You should use that, read it, and get ideas for yourself. But as we said right here in the tweet today, nobody can guarantee you winners. But if you want to join a community of like-minded individuals that are all out to help each other, while understanding the ups and downs of DFS, SHIPIT Nation is the place to be. Over $600,000 in community wins yesterday. And that's just the big dogs that were thrown in the tweet. It's probably a lot more. Someone added that comment. There's tons more in the Discord. The community is alive and well and kicking. So check it out. Today is the last day to use the promo code TRY20. If you want to get in, it gets you the content, the projections, the tools, the education, the community. Build your own process. Be able to make something that you can get after and become something that you can use to make something that you can repeat with, is what I'm trying to say there, just so you can actually go out and do your own thing. You don't know, like in some cases when you're just following someone, you're just hoping they win all the time. That's not always the case. So you got to make something that you can use and be repeatable for yourself. Have your own process, get it done. Go to shipitnation.com. Use the promo code TRY20 for Tyler, for Nades, for myself, ToeTagginTambo. Let's ship it.